Hi, welcome to this how to play video of Exodus Edge of Extinction. As previously mentioned, Exodus Proxima Centauri, which is the base game for this expansion, is one of the best space games out there in my opinion, taking always under consideration all of the aspects and all of the parameters, which is game length, production value, quality, features, theme, game mechanics, everything. This is by far the best space game in my opinion out there, and it's not only my opinion, there are a lot of people that back me up on this. So I was really excited when I got this copy of the expansion Edge of Extinction, which was an expansion to an already fantastic game, the base game. So let's now see quickly what this expansion adds to the base game. For starters, just look at that. I mean, this picture in front of you. This is fantastic. This is really a lot of meat. This is a heavy expansion, heavy in terms of features added, but not in complexity, which is what we want, variety in expansion boxes. So we get lots and lots of stuff, a ton of stuff from this quality expansion, among which are quickly depicted the different factions that we can see here. Each player now has a specific faction that has asymmetrical abilities, advantages and disadvantages compared to the other opponents. Lots of spacecraft and lots of additional player material, which adds more meaty battles on the game board. More spacecraft means a lot of things, a lot of occupation, a lot of strategy, more maneuvering, more tactical, more presence on the game board. Fantastic addition. On top of that, you get special color-coded action cards depending on the faction. That means that each faction is really asymmetric, because besides their own technological game tech tree that they have, the branch, they have their own special action decks, which makes them a little bit different than the other players. So this is tremendous addition to the base game. More politics cards, more resistance cards, combat cards, which is a new feature, which makes the combats a bit more lengthy, but still gives the option to surprise your opponents and even in a bad situation have a card that can get you out of it, maybe or maybe not. The same goes for the neutral forces on the game board. More upgrades that they go on planetary systems as well. Lots of upgrades are going to go into detail. And finally, the additional extension to the technological tree of the game. So each player is going to have one additional board, again depending on their faction. You can see on the bottom, which will go on the right of your personal game board. Normally we don't go and say our opinion up front, but this is a really good expansion that we surprised the amount of thought and amount of quality that went into it, because it really elevates the game even more. A fantastic game becomes an excellent game. So this is a generic player board that each player had, which was the same for each player. So each player just differentiated themselves from the different options that they got on the research and the technology tree, which is one of the more well thought technology trees out there. But still, the rest of the game was the same, so that meant same spaceships, same options and same potential for each player all together, and then you differentiate on your choices. Now what this expansion does, which is tremendous, it adds the factions, which give a real good asymmetry and a real good different feel to each of the sides, each of the players. So you're going to feel completely different if you play one game with one faction or another game with another faction. So what you do is you take the extension. Besides the rest, you take the extension of your faction, you add it on the right. So now this all is the personal game board. So besides the generic options for the tech tree, you get your specific faction-orientated options for your technologies and for abilities and for special options to follow through the game. So let's start from the miniatures. What you get in the expansion is more spaceship, which is fantastic because you get more epic battles, more things on the game board and more options. So you're going to have a larger fleet to deal with your opponents and their tactics. So in more detail, you can see already placed on the board what you get on the base game on the left, which is all this, and what you get with the expansion Edge of Extinction. In more detail, we start the base game with 2 war cruisers. We get 2 more with expansion. We start with 2 dark raiders here, and we get 2 additional with expansion. 2 fighters, and we get even 2 more fighters, so up to 4 with expansion. And last, we have 2 battle carriers in the base game, and we get 1 additional to the total of 3 including the expansion. Okay, this is welcome addition, but one would say this is more of the same, just more epic battles. Fair enough. So what it's unique in this expansion, and it's really added value, is the factions added, so the asymmetry. So each faction feels differently from the other. So just an example, we have here the personal player rate for the specific blue faction, which is the Arctic Dominion. So on top of the already added spaceships that you get with the game, you get the specific unique feel of this faction. This goes for each of the 6 ones, and I'm going to go into detail to get a brief summary of how each one feels like. So what you get the feeling, the flavor of this faction, so a bit of history, where they come from. This is a very handy player aid that people are going to grab and use all the time, because it has the special ability, the different starting resources that you can see here. So each faction starts differently in the game. So depending on their weaknesses and strengths, they have different starting resources for the standard game. Then there is the turn structure, a reminder how the turn goes. Don't be frightened by the long steps. If you haven't seen the original video of the base game, go and check it out. But this adds a bit of modifications, so the majority of the turn structure is the same, just a bit of a different inserted sections that are based on the additions of the expansion. Then we get the upgrades, the specific upgrades of the faction that we have in front of us. The action cards. Remember, the action cards are different for each of the factions, so they have some common things, but overall they feel differently, and they give a bit of edge depending on the specific color that you select. Explanation of the space combat here. And then we get the explanation of the technologies. These technologies are only for you, so none of the players will have an access to this one or potential to copy them, because they're unique. They refer only to Arctic Dominion, so it goes with the rest of the player boards and the factions. And these explain what you get in addition to the basic technologies, your own specific potential for more options, essentially. The back of the player board of the blue player has some generic information, so this is the same for everyone as a quick reminder. So we get a description of the general actions that what they do, so it's the action card what it does. The upgrades in the base game, so the cannons, the lasers and the shields and everything, and all the weapons of mass destruction that they go and occupy the planet, defenses. And then we get all the technologies grouped per category, and we have an explanation, so you can have a quick reminder out of the back of your player aid what each technology does. So, different factions. So each faction has special abilities and special strengths and disadvantages, and it's recommended for the players to have a quick look on the overview of each of these aspects in order to select either randomly or by specifically targeting their taste, one of the factions to play with for the first game. So quickly, let's go and see what each faction has as a uniqueness and what it offers on the table. So, the Serious Theocracy. They're focused on politics and controlling the meta game. They require an in-depth knowledge of all the base game and the expansion, especially the political cards. So they have a lot of different technologies that are based on the politics, mainly, as you would expect from their name. Then, as we've seen before, we have the Arctic Dominion, which are these guys here. These are the traders of the game. They're focused on trade. The Dominion will literally buy its way to victory. So they make money into victory points, the specific ability, and among other things. They're like experts in trading, and they're masters of trading. So they're really good at that, and they should benefit the players from their ability. Then we get the Han Xia dynasty, which is this one. This dynasty is a versatile faction that they specialized on blitz attacks on its opponents, so they strike weaker enemies in space combat, and they create combos with the abilities to gather VPs early in the game. People should take a note of this one. And then we get the Titan Diarchy. These guys over here. These are focused on technologies. The Diarchy has a limited interaction with its enemies. A clever research strategy makes an obvious path to the victory, with quite unique, straightforward tactics that you need to follow. So you need to focus heavily on technology, because if you want to do different actions, you need to copy it from other players as a second action. But their strengths are their technologies, they're really tech guys. Then we get the humans, the Solaris Confederation, which is this faction. The humans are masters of strategic warfare. the Confederation uses weapons of mass destruction to seize down their enemies, and they focus on controlling the majority of the planets and keeping the opponents at a distance. These are the humans, and the last faction are the Blackwater, the really warfare type of faction. They always are combat ready. They're ready to crush their enemies in space combat, no matter how the larger fleet are. They're really good at battle, and they're really good at attacking. So they equip their ships with heavy cannons and strong shields and take them to the toughest of the enemies. So they go all in for battle right away from the start of the game. Now, as you understand, this is just a brief description of the quick aspects of each faction. In order to fully understand, you have to go and quickly have a quick look on the technologies and the unique properties and abilities for each faction. But the overall feeling is the one that we just described. Now, another thing added to this expansion is the uniqueness of the action deck of each player. So on the top row you can see the base game action cards, which are generic for all players. That means that each player, each color had the same exactly cards, and it was a matter of selecting when you decide to play each of your action cards. So the top row was the same for every player in the base game. Now this new expansion adds it replaces the top action card deck of the player with this one. So there are more detailed and more orientated towards the abilities of each faction. So this is for the blue player, it's again color coded, but as you can see there are a few similarities with the old deck, but the majority have been altered. So you get discounts depending on your ability, you get a special boost depending on the action card you select to play, and also some things are combined differently. So again, this is tailor-made selectively for your specific faction, so it gives a unique feel if you play with the blue guys, the yellow guys, the red guys, etc. More features of the expansion include additional cards of the categories that we had before in the base game. That means the neutral resistance. We have more of each level, 1, level 2 and level 3. So you get more cards that they are from the expansion, and they add more variety to the game, which was already quite good variety to begin with, just to mention it. So you can always take a differentiation from the card depending on the, let me show you quickly. On the top of the card there is the description of the name of the expansion, so it says Exodus Edge of Extinction, so you can easily take them out of the deck if you want to play the base game again for any reason I wouldn't think of. I would always select the expansion once you know the game, the base game. And then you get additional politic cards that they are from the expansion, again have the name of the expansion at the top of the card, and they add a bit of more variability and more meat into the game, so more cards with more options. Another feature of the expansion is all these upgrades that you get now, that you can install planetary systems, and you can make them unique and give them special abilities and special advantages by installing these upgrades. Some of them are specifically for each faction again. Another addition, a new feature in the expansion, are the combat cards. This was not in the base game. This adds a bit more meat to the combat. It makes it a bit longer, just a bit, but certainly does add options which are welcomed in an expansion, in my opinion. So this is going to be included in the second cancel stage, that after we finish the cancel stage we receive combat cards in each turn. So depending on the number of players, the rulebook has a good table that describes for each different number of player sessions. So for 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6, the players were going to receive a different number of battle cards that they're going to have the potential to use them in the combat, if they have any combat during their turn. There is a size of 6 cards for each player, so each turn they're going to get a different number of combat cards depending on their position on the turn order. So for example, with 5 players we can see that the first player is going to get just 1 card, the second the same, the third and the fourth are going to get 2, and the fifth are going to get 3 cards. So this is more or less balanced in order to make sure that the last player in turn order is going to get more combat cards, because most probably he's going to get attacked or optionally attacked by the other players without having the ability to go first, so he needs to have more combat cards to be able to defend easier. So let's have a quick look of how some combat cards look like. This is a back of the players' combat cards. This is from the neutral forces, the resistance forces. So they also have combat cards. On the top we have the name of the combat card. Then we have in the second box if it's going to be played in the first combat round only, or some cards can be played, for example, in any combat round, as we can see. And then again we have the title of the expansion, so you can remove them, but also the back of the card because they're unique to the expansion. And at the bottom, the third box, you have the description of the card and what it does. Here you roll 1 combat die to a maximum of 6 dice. For every 6 you roll, deal 2 damage instead of 1. So the players are going to get a chance to play these cards in reverse turn order, so they're going to have a bit more variety into the combat system implemented to the normal, just the plain combat system from the base game. Again, here we can see the same idea behind the neutral forces, resistance forces combat cards, because if you attack neutral forces, resistance, and a player on, I think your left or your right, doesn't matter, it's in the rulebook, you're going to have to play one of the cards in order to give the balance to the resistance spaceships, so they also have combat cards. Again, with this expansion, the turn structure has a lot of similarities with the previous base game, so there are only a few steps intersected in the main structure of the base game, but still they're orientated towards the additions from the expansion. And what you get in brief are the following that you have also on your player board as a quick reminder. So you get in turn 1, in your turn structure, you get in phase 1 the upkeep stage. We reset the market, we increase the population, expert cloning, clone factory. This is a reminder of the technologies that the player can have, the special technologies. Increase of population, therefore. Then we go to repair ships, basic repairs and advanced repairs, the additional technologies. Receive income and pay tax, a reminder for advanced politics. Get CP income, CP refinery, reminder. Get Axinium income, Axinium refinery, and then get Phasium income, Phasium refinery, a reminder to the technologies. Then we move to phase 2, which is the council stage. Remove resolutions, political decisions, corrupt politics and visionary politics. Bonus action decision, elections, corrupt politics, and combat cards drafting. So this is the stage where we get the combat cards. This is new to the game as well. Then phase 3, action stage. Play 1 action, play 1 reaction, expert politics, play 2nd action, basic politics, play 2nd reaction, expert politics, play 3rd action, master politics, and play bonus action. Then 4th is the phase of the fire of weapons of mass destruction stage. Distance checks, radar target scanner, damage rolls, SDS, ASDS, interceptors, strategic bombers. And the 5th and last stage is the conquest stage, which is done twice, as we know from the base game. Then we mount the population, we perform ship movement, we move population, civilian ships, detection of cloaking, advanced cloaking and radar, player combat, Centurion resistance combat, quantum reflection, and then deploy population, landing, maneuver, commando, expert, research. So this concludes the turn structure of the expansion. Now another thing that drastically changes in the expansion is the movement systems. So more or less like the base game, Exodus Edge of Extinction provides players with 2 different options for movements, and players would basically have now 3 options for movement, and they would need to agree from the beginning of their session which movement system they're going to use, and they're going to apply it throughout the game. So besides the basic movement system, which as we know uses this real-time assignment of turn order for and positioning of the spaceships, so we all hide them and assign them to our ships, and then we reveal and we apply. Then this is the basic system, the movement basic system. The expansion also introduces another movement, which is the reverse turn order movement. So players move their ships in reverse turn order once we reveal the markers, one by one. They move all the ships in a number of hexes away. Each ship with a basic nuclear drive may be moved up to 1 hex away, each ship with a fusion drive up to 2 hexes away, and each ship with an anti-gravity drive up to 3 hexes away. Ships with a hyperspace drive may be moved obviously everywhere on the game board, as we know from the ability of the technology. But what we get also as a possibility in this expansion is to use as a movement system the drive power movement, which is actually recommended from the game, that they want us to use this one because obviously it's more balanced and more well thought. So I'm going to go straight ahead and use this one in my opinion. The drive power management works similarly to the reverse turn order movement. However, instead of players moving all their ships in reverse turn order, the ships are moved using both player order and the quality of the drives. To perform a drive power management movement, follow these steps. Then in reverse turn order, each player may move all their ships 1 hex. In reverse turn order, each player may move all the ships with at least a fusion drive, two moves or more. Then in reverse turn order, each player may move all the ships with at least one anti-gravity drive, 3 moves or more. And finally, in reverse turn order, each player moves all the ships with a hyperdrive technology, which is an unlimited movement one. So let's summarize. Exodus Proxima Centauri is one of the best, in my opinion, my personal opinion, the best space game out there. It really packs a thrive in using all the right elements, the right feel and the right length to give you a unique experience of space game boarding. So it is really excellent on its own and gives a lot of variability and a lot of meat to the base game. But now that I know the existence of this expansion, I would always select it and always use it with the base game. This is a fantastic addition to the base game. It adds a ton of stuff, more spacey to make more meaty and more big fleets and more meaty combats across the game board. More cards, additional elements like the combat cards that give a bit of variability in the combat and give them a bit more meat to the combat as well. The unique asymmetry of the different game factions and the different abilities and technologies they have. This is fantastic because if you play a game with a Blackwater and then you go away and come back and you play another session with a Titan DRK, this is a completely different experience, and it adds so much variability and so much fun to the game that it's a must in my opinion. Also the upgrades that you get and the additional extension to your tech tree gives a lot of flavor and a lot of meat towards this direction. Production quality is fantastic. I would expect nothing less from NSKN games because they always deliver the best into the game production, and this is something to be mentioned each and every time. And what is the bottom line? The bottom line, do you need this expansion? Well, if you just get the base game, it's a tremendous game and it gives you a lot of meat and a lot of things and you'll be really happy. But once you see how this expansion works and all the features that it adds to the base game, then it's a one-way direction in my opinion, because you will love it, you will absolutely want to play it every time with the expansion because it adds a ton of stuff, a lot of variability and the asymmetry of the different factions. So it is a must-have. So if you're really watching this video because you're interested in the base, you already know a bit of things about the base game, then don't hesitate, just go right ahead and buy the expansion because you're gonna love it and you're gonna feel like it should have been always one thing and it's a must for your collection. So I'm really excited, as you can see from the tone of my voice, because I'm really happy when a fantastic game becomes an excellent game, and this is what this expansion has done to this Exodus Proxima Centauri. It elevated it even higher. So without further ado, let's go and play some sessions.